Are you ever on an adventure and find yourself stranded with a flat tire? Well, this little kit can get you going again and save you $200 at the tire shop. And that's exactly what I'll be showing you today. But first, we need to cover a few things before we go ahead and plug this tire, because you can't, unfortunately, plug every hole. The first one is, well, you're going to want to make sure that the hole is smaller than about 1/4 inch. Anything larger, it's going to be pretty hard to go ahead and plug it and safely drive on the road. The second thing is you want to make sure that it's in the middle of the tire. You don't want anything on the sidewall here or on the sidewall here. Because these are radial tires, they take a lot of their structure from the sidewall. And when you have damage in the sidewall, unfortunately, the tire is going to need a replacement. There's no real way around that, unfortunately. But if you have a 1/4 inch hole in the center area of the tire, you can go ahead and patch this. With that said, it is good to keep in mind that this repair is temporary. While it is going to get you home and on the highway, it's best to go ahead and take your tire to a tire shop after, which they can go ahead and patch it from the inside, making sure you're good to go for all your adventures. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about exactly what you need to plug your tire. And the first and foremost thing is you're going to need some sort of plugs. These come in 2 different variants, but you'll notice that they come in these little plastic covers, and they're essentially some sort of rubberized plug. As I said, there's 2 different variants. There's self-vulcanizing ones, which are the ones I have here, and there's another type that would require a contact rubber cement. As you can see, I've used both in the past, but just for ease of use, I do like the self-vulcanizing ones, so I carry these ones all the time. Other than that, you're going to need 2 pretty important tools. One is called a reamer, and it's going to help clean out the tire so that when you put that plug in there, it's going to have a good non-leaking plug. And then finally, you're going to need the tool to actually apply it. What it is very similar to the reamer here, but instead of a rod with some kind of sandpapery kind of texture, it's going to be a straight rod with a fork in it. This is where you're going to apply the plug and then shove it through the tire, which I'll show you in a little bit. Other than that, it's always good to have some gloves, some safety goggles, and pliers and screwdrivers to get whatever is stuck in your tire out before you plug it. And I always like to keep it in my car here in one of my toolboxes, but for other people, maybe it's just a little portable kit that you carry around your vehicles. And with all of that said and done, we can go ahead, pick up our tools, and go install it on the Forester. And I mean, technically we are installing something, even if it is just plugs in the tire. But first, we are gonna have to locate the hole here. For us, pretty obvious. We can hear the air coming out of it, and we can see a big silver nail in there. So it will be pretty easy to locate. If you're having troubles, and you are at home doing this, you can take a spray bottle and some soapy water and you see the bubbles. But for us, and when we're on the trail, when this most commonly happens, we can go ahead, locate it pretty easily, and then just go ahead and pry that out. And next we'll go ahead and clean up the hole using the reamer. This is honestly the hardest part, I find, because you gotta go ahead and see if you can't push it into where that nail was. Lots of times the nail will be smaller than this. So you're really gonna push and kind of work your way through. And then what you're doing is you're cleaning and roughing up this hole so that you will have essentially a nice clean area to go ahead and put the plug in. Now with our hole cleaned up, we can go ahead and install the plugs. As I said, we're using self-vulcanizing ones, so we don't need contact cement, but if yours do, this is where you'd also be using that contact cement. So I'll take one of those, and then we gotta feed it through here. It's a bit of a pain, honestly, but if you kind of just wiggle it through, then eventually you'll get it about halfway through the tool, and you'll notice that I can fold it and we're looking at about halfway on the sky. And this is where you want to make sure you've reamed a good hole, because this whole thing is going to be pushed through and into the tire, where only about this much of the plug is actually going to be sticking out of the tire, and then you're going to pull it back through so that it kind of, the best way I can describe it is it kind of mushrooms out on the inside, and we'll plugs the inside of the tire here. And then eventually what we'll do is we'll trim it. But as I said, you got to get this whole thing through the tire, which sometimes is a bit of a fight. So if it's not going in, maybe try reaming it a little bit more. And then once it is in, you can go ahead and you kind of want to pull it out slowly. And this should leave the plug in and take the tool out. It's a bit of a technique. I just kind of like to take slow your time and make sure the plug isn't moving. And it should. Everything goes right. Be a pain, but it should pop out like that. And you can see that we got the plug in there, and we have a little bit of the tail end here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some snips and just trim this guy off so that it doesn't get caught. And then hopefully you should have a plug in your tire. If you're having issues, particularly with the plug slipping out, there's a couple issues. The first one is you're not pushing far enough. As I said, you want to be like 3/4 with just a little bit of plug sticking out, because most of it is going to be on the inside of the tire, kind of ballooning or mushrooming out when you pull it out. And if you're having that plug pull out, also try to pull it out just slower and making sure that it is exactly straight to when you put it in. If you do any sort of twisting, it's going to get tangled up, and actually just pull it out when it comes out, and then you won't have a plug in there. And then finally, if you're doing all that, your plugs might be too old. Try changing those plugs every couple years, because they will eventually dry out and then they'll be pretty useless. But if you do got a plug in and it's all working out, we can go ahead, take our air. For us, we got onboard air on the Forester, but if you got an air compressor like many of us do on our off-road adventures, go ahead, plug it in, and start filling up our tire and seeing if that plug holds. And there we go. The tire is back and ready for some adventures. As I said, it's always good to go ahead and get a proper patch done on these tires once you're back in civilization. But this could be a very important skill when you have a hole and nowhere to go. Let me know down below if you've ever had to patch your tire like this to get out of the wilderness. And while you're down there, don't forget to go ahead and check out, the channel memberships for some exclusive perks, as well as Flat for Off-Road for all your adventure Subaru needs. And with that being said, I'll be seeing you guys on the next adventure.